There is nothing here but that it is alive. Even though it may be inanimate, it is nothing but a beautiful reflection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who have inner perception. And there is another pillar known as the pillar of Tawbah. What happened here was that when the Jews broke their pact with the Muslims of peaceful, harmonious coexistence within Medina, the Prophet was ordered to render their ploys null and void. And hence the Prophet planned to conduct an expedition against these people. There was a person by the name of Abu Lubaba who went and leaked this to the Jews or the Jewish community. And after that, he felt remorse. Remorse gripped him to an extent that he resorted to the mosque of the Prophet. He tied his arms behind a tree, a date tree, which was in place of this pillar originally, and began to supplicate and ask for forgiveness and cry. The only point he would be untied would be the point when he would want to pray salah or eat food or go to see his natural needs, and his daughter would untie his hands. The Prophet was in his resting quarters, and the verses were revealed. The Prophet, with a smile, came and he said to Abu Lubaba, Allah has forgiven you. Yet this Prophet of mercy could have executed Abu Lubaba for treason. However, when the Prophet gave him the good news, the Prophet said, had you come to me, Allah would have forgiven you immediately. Think about this. Had you come to me directly, Allah would have forgiven you immediately. That is a mosque, that is a tree. This is the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we hold the body of the Prophet, the real Prophet is not there, it is here. That is where the real Prophet is. As Imam Ali has said, indeed our graves are in the hearts of our lovers. That is the true place and the seat of Allah and the blessed Prophet and the loving Imams. And think about this point. Our association with the Prophet can only be to the extent to which the Prophet exists within us. Allama Tabatabai conducts a very in-depth discussion on the tafsir of Sirat al-Mustaqim. And he comes to this view that the Quran talks of two types of paths. One it designates as Sabil and Subul, and the other one is Sirat. The difference between the two, he states, and this is phenomenal what he says, it's exactly in accordance with the Sadrian existential philosophy. He states, look, Sirat al-Mustaqim is not a path at all. It is the journey of the human soul to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Sabil are all those righteous courses that the soul takes in the course of completion. So the Sabil, the ways, change. They change hand at instances, at moments in lives, but they are all paving the one Sirat al-Mustaqim. And then, at that point, we find the hadith in which Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullah alayhi says, I am the Sirat al-Mustaqim. From here, what we understand is that Ali ibn Abi Talib, or the Prophet, they are not those who are there. In principle, they are those who are here. And the Ali who will come inside the grave is not Ali who is in Najaf, but is the Ali that is born, raised here, and that grows and completes himself within the human being. That is the Ali that will be reflected. For Ali ibn Abi Talib is the archetype, if we can call him that, of utmost goodness. Similarly, the Prophet is goodness in its entirety. So when we go to the Prophet, bear in mind that we can only relate to him to the extent to which he is within us. That Prophet is of little use if there is no Prophet in here. The Prophet had said, I am an outer Prophet who has come to awaken the inner Prophet. So now when we go to the Prophet, if we find his love absorbing us, then it means that we ourselves aspire to those heights and to those ranks at which he existed. And we from within ourselves are becoming him. If we are standing at that point, what prevents us from asking Allah to forgive us for the sake of the Prophet? And what prevents each one of us to stand there and say to Allah, what fault is it of mine that he is not in front of me at this point? What fault is it of mine? Why should I be deprived to this extent? If you had to create me, why not in his presence? Why now? And this will reveal to us at the depths of our being that that Prophet has not died. He is alive. He is there now as he was then. And we say, Ya Rasulullah, I have come to you. And the Quran says, what prevents them when they sin or they transgress against their souls, that they should come to the Prophet, and the Prophet seeks forgiveness for them, and they ask Allah to pardon them, and that Allah will forgive them. At that point, we need to open up. The Sharia, the black and white of law, does not touch the ranks of love. Love is something that comes from within. It is its own dictate. It is the author of its own terms. Love knows no black and white of the Sharia. Try and explain to a mother how she should express her love to a child by the black and white of the ink. She will listen not. Similarly, the hearts, when they become involved, the Sharia becomes secondary. The method of standing, the method of saluting, these are all formalities for those who, once they regain their sanity, can then become formal. We are talking about blind lovers who are meeting their Prophet, who know no formality. And that is the way to be primarily with the Prophet. Now, you saw the Prophet's shrine. There are 3 doors. Bab Baqi, Bab Salam, Bab Jibreel, Bab al-Rahma, sorry. Bab al-Rahma was the door from whence people with urgent needs used to come to visit the Prophet, and the Prophet would abandon everything he would be doing and go and receive them. And that is why symbolically it is said that if you have a great need, go through that door and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will respond immediately. As for the area between the Prophet's mosque and Jannatul Baqi, this is to be the Mahalla of Bani Hashim. When we came here in the 80s, there were ruins of this area still present. And in front of the Prophet's mosque, there were very small streets. There was the house of Imam Hassan Salamullah alayhi. Now bring to mind all those narrations that we hear, that Al-Hassan, as we said, these are beautiful depictions of Allah's beauty. The Prophet, we feel a sense of love with the Prophet, a warmth. He welcomes us and embraces us. Imam Hassan is known as Kareem Ali Muhammad, the most generous amongst the Ali Muhammad, whose generosities knew no limits. Now we hear those descriptions of Imam Hassan, that the state of his majesty used to be such that whenever he used to open his door and step out, the people within the streets who are sitting would stand up in the awe of Hassan, and those who are standing would sit down and pause. This is how grand Al-Hassan was. And 1 or 2 words about this magnificent Imam of ours before we move forward. That once a Jew approached him. Now, Imam Hassan used to manifest the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than any other Imam apart from the crown prince, Imam Rada salamullah alayhi. He was on his stallion, Arabian horse, and wearing fine garments. And a Jewish man, in order to mock at Al-Hassan, appeared in front of him wearing rags. And he said, "O grandson of the Prophet of Islam, may I ask,